Russian man like inside the dark, call me Bill Snatcher. Just the brother for the rapture. I hang live, holding on strong, hard to capture. Extravagant, resurrect the track and it's militant. And I react like a garden and start killing. It's manifesting. The God's work like appliances, dealing in my sight like a lot.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto Naruto Next Generations discussion. And today, I want to talk to you guys about the 5 things we need during Boruto's time skip. So, as we all know, Boruto's manga was stated to be in the final stages before going into a time skip back in December 2020. And after the last manga chapter, it does feel as if Ikemoto's words of soon are finally coming at hand, because if we're being honest, there is a lot riding on Boruto's time skip, a lot more than fans would have thought when it was first shown to us during 2016 for the flash forward sequence, which brings us to Boruto's time skip, where a shakeup is the opportunity to bring back fans who stopped supporting the manga with their money to buy physical copies as well as digital copies, which goes into the overall sales total. So now that we've established why a time skip is needed as much as it is and why it's going to be so important, we need to take a hard look at 5 things that need to happen during Boruto's time skip to make enough of a splash to bring back interest in fans who jump ship. Starting things off with number 1, and the most obvious point, we need Boruto to have emerged from the time skip with his training with Sasuke. Due to it being a time skip, the training itself is very likely to not be shown in manga format, and if it is, it will only be for a brief 1 or 2 manga panels at best, since Naruto's time skip training with Jiraiya wasn't shown to us except for a few flashes in the manga during key reveals, like say when Naruto remember how to break out a genjutsu because Jiraiya taught him the basics, and when Naruto went 4 tails against Orochimaru in Naruto chapter 291, we saw a brief flashback where Jiraiya recalled Naruto going into a 4-tail state and giving him the scar on his chest. However, just as Naruto returned from his training and Jiraiya hinted that there was something different about Naruto, with there being a restriction and measures put in place to protect Naruto from himself, I think we need something like that with Boruto. Having Boruto return from his training with the scar of his eye, it does wonders from a narrative perspective, because it's been something that we as fans have wanted to know the origin behind it ever since we saw it. Having Boruto return with the scar on his eye and setting it up for Sasuke to have been the one who gave it to him during their training works, because we've seen a lot of foreshadowing for this. Boruto, when he tried to suppress Momoshiki after he took over his body, made it a point to cover up his Byakugan eye, implying that Momoshiki's control was somewhat linked to that eye. We know from Amato's words that even though Momoshiki can't resurrect using Boruto's body, he can still take over his body under the right conditions. Having Sasuke push Boruto too far in training to a point where Boruto's chakra drops too low and allows Momoshiki to take control, and ends up with Sasuke slashing Boruto's eye, that's something that works. It adds another layer of danger. That, coupled with finally paying off extended training, will bring in attention from fans who checked out on Boruto. Number 2, we need Code to have done something to establish himself as a legitimate threat. My collaboration with Anime Balls Deep on how to fix Code was just given to me by one of my favorite editors to work with. Since in that video we went very in depth on how to fix Code as a villain, I'm not going to repeat those talking points because you'll be seeing that video soon, but I will explain the importance of Code needing to come out of this time skip as a legitimate villain. Boruto's manga, you can argue, has a bit of a villain problem. It can be argued that the villains haven't done the best job in terms of traction for the story. To use a wrestling analogy, Boruto is our babyface heavyweight champion who we as the audience, we have to cheer for. The villain is the heel who we're supposed to hate and root against. A great example being how a lot of the people in the fandom turned on Kawaki when he killed Boruto in the manga, but Kawaki right now is not a villain, so that does not count yet. In order for a good babyface and heel rivalry to work, the two have to have chemistry, conflicting ideals, and the heel has to push the babyface to the point where the babyface has to push out of a major corner in order to overcome the heel. Very similar to how villains like Pain and Obito pushed Naruto mentally and challenged his beliefs in a way that made him eventually overcoming both of those characters feel earned. The same with how the co-main character Sasuke saw the shinobi world and the system of the shinobi as the villains to Sasuke's story. his battle with Naruto ended in failure, but it was a earned payoff because of everything that's happened. In Boruto, Momoshiki sticking around serves as a good start, but the possibility of him resurrecting is now gone. Kishimoto, if he follows the mythology behind Momotaro the Peach Boy, which is what Momoshiki is based off of, Boruto and Momoshiki teaming up in the future seems very likely. And if they do team up, that effectively kills Momoshiki as a villain. Now, Ishiki accomplished the goal of getting real heat because there was a real sense of worry in the fandom that Ishiki would kill Naruto or Sasuke before Ishiki's lifespan ran out, and the fact that we know Kawaki was going to get karma again added to the sense of dread that Ishiki might put the karma back on Kawaki. Some people thought maybe Kawaki was being controlled by Ishiki in the future and likely ends up killing somebody like Sasuke, or God forbid Baryon Mode actually killed Naruto. People were worried back then. Code sticking around as a villain, as a main villain as of right now, it has him on pace to be a villain who stays around longer than any villain that we've seen so far in Boruto. Momoshiki debuted in chapter 2 and was killed off in chapter 9, 7 chapters. Jougan debuted in chapter 15 and died in chapter 46, a total of 31 chapters. Ishiki was first name dropped in Boruto chapter 35, following Naruto and Sasuke versus Jougan, where Ishiki spoke from within Jigen's body to berate Jougan for having his body break down after such a short fight. Ishiki died in chapter 54, which is a total of 19 chapters. Code is coming up upon 20 chapters as being the main villain. That is right there in our face that we're aware of, which puts him on pace for eventually catching Jougan as being the longest running main villain, but he does not have the flair that Jougan had as a villain, which is a problem. We need Code to come out of this time skip not only stronger, but also written in a way to where he can directly challenge Boruto in part 2 of the story, since as Boruto explained it to us, part 2 is going to be Boruto's story. Perhaps Code does this by finding a way to emotionally push Kawaki over the edge, since those two characters are linked, and begin turning Kawaki into a monster through his actions. That can work. Perhaps this is done with Code coming out of the time skip with an actual brain cell, and he's able to wear down on the psyche of Boruto in other methodical ways as he tries to hunt down Boruto to feed him to the Ten Tails, perhaps going as far as to target Boruto's younger sister Himawari. Whatever route this takes, Code has to be a strong enough of a villain in more than the sense of just being powerful. He needs to come out being able to legitimately push Boruto and give us a real reason to root against him other than he's a bad guy. There's nothing wrong with being evil for the sake of being evil, but if you go that route, we need a real sense of danger around Code to keep us invested, which that is currently Code's problem. So number 3, the major elephant in the room that has to be addressed is that Boruto's anime and manga have to use the time skip to get more characters over with the public. That's not me saying like, hey, I don't like, say, Boruto's a character, but just like how when I tell people how Naruto wasn't in the top 5 of characters in Naruto's manga for me, the same's true for Boruto. I enjoy the character, but he's not a top 5 character for me. I appreciate the arc that Boruto's undergone, enough so that I did what I feel is one of my best video essays on the channel for Boruto's character, but he's not in my top 5. I was just being objective on that video. Now you might say, but hey, that's only you. However, the problem is that the truth is that only Kawaki as a male character was ranked in the most recent anime poll in Japan that dealt with all anime. Kawaki was the only Boruto era character who made that list. Boruto didn't make the cut despite the fact that he's thrown in our face in the anime constantly, despite the fact that there are certain episodes where you really didn't need him in the anime. He was still thrown in there. In the manga is repeating what Naruto's manga did, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which I've done a whole video explaining those similarities. I recommend checking that out. Boruto in particular needs to come out of this time skip with something that makes Japanese fans gravitate more towards his character. It can be something done to further evolve his personality, or it can be giving him a character flaw that resonates with the fans more than whatever they tried now. The same can be true for the other cast. more needs to be done to elevate them. Even though Naruto's manga did not place a lot of focus on other members of Naruto's generation, after we got to a certain point, we still had characters who got over with the limited screen time that they had in the manga. Shikamaru in particular made the most out of his limited runs. Brief moments in the tuning exams, a good arc during the Sasuke retrieval mission, and he went out with a bang during the Akatsuki suppression arc, because in the manga version of the story, it was him and him alone who worked through his grief in order to find a way to get revenge on Hidan and Kakuzu. That scene of Shikamaru crying like a baby in his daddy's arms and everything, that never happened in the manga. Daddy showed up and saw son had already came up with the plan, and that's why Kakashi is so shocked when he saw how thorough and well thought out it was, because Shikamaru spent the days after Asuma's death training and coming up with this plan. He didn't have another major role for a few hundred chapters until the war arc started, but with Shikamaru, you saw a very clear arc being formed with this character when everything was done. In the manga, we didn't see any of that for the other side characters in Boruto. Sarada, for instance, her main development in manga format is still stuck with what Masashi Kishimoto did in 2015 for Naruto Gaiden. The previous Boruto writer Ukyo Kodachi did absolutely nothing with Sarada's character. She's still stuck on, she wants to be the first Uchiha to be Hokage, and she's assertive to the point where she's being bossy or showing the same old genuine concern that she's always shared for people that she cares for. But she hasn't had the needle move for her growth in the character in terms of manga format just yet. That has to change. Even if the manga is only a snapshot and the anime is meant to be a full picture, as Ikemoto said, the growth still needs to be there. So you hedge your bets, because banking solely on Boruto and Kawaki in manga format has only succeeded in making Kawaki popular. Boruto as a character has not gotten over in Japan when we view him in broader anime polls besides Boruto polls, where Boruto fans tend to rate Boruto high, but in the general anime community, he hasn't ranked that high. Hell, this might even be a good way to get somebody like Konoha over more fans by giving him, say, his Kakashi moment where he gets one memorable battle against a very powerful enemy, like how Kakashi had his moment against Zabuza. Everybody remembers that scene where he uses the water dragon jutsu. You need something like that for Konoha as a character. You need another popular character besides Kawaki, and I think Boruto era Konoha getting that respectable battle could help, especially if you go the route that Kishimoto did with Naruto, where he had the balls to take Naruto's character out the manga for over a year to focus on another character and other side characters, just to show us glimpses of Naruto, to remind us that, hey, Naruto's still the main character of the story. I will forever die on the hill that the former writer Ukyo Kodachi made a major mistake by not having Konoha in the Boro fight, fighting alongside Team 7 to try and rescue Naruto. That was a huge missed opportunity. Konoha is a character that needs to be fixed, and he's a character who has potential if he is fixed. You can accomplish this by having Konoha do something he's never done in the manga, which is actually be a legitimate mentor to somebody on Team 7, whether that be Boruto, Sarada, or Mitsuki. Kakashi filled that role for Team 7 more than once. Asuma filled that role for Shikamaru. Guy filled that role for Lee, and to a lesser extent, he filled that role for Neji in the manga. Part of the beauty of Naruto that we've not seen in Boruto's manga is the bond between master and student. We've seen it in the anime, we've seen it in the light novels, but we've not seen it in the manga. Now, number 4, this is probably the most important right here, which is that we need a guidance for either Amato, Code, or Ishiki that ties in the future plot points for the story while also addressing something in the past dealing with these characters. When Naruto's manga went into a time skip, we had 6 weeks worth of chapters that focus on Kakashi's time as part of Team Minato, and we learned the story of how he got the Sharingan. That was later used to set up Tobi as Obito in terms of a reveal and the Obito and Amato connection. With Amato, you can do an Amato Gaiden where you take 4, 5, 6 chapters to reveal his past with his daughter while setting up an explanation for why he's done what he's done. And if he's a villain for the story, you drop an extremely clear foreshadowing that leaves no doubt in everyone's minds. With Code, you can explore that hole that Ishiki filled in his life that made him worship the Otsutsuki to a point where he admired Jigen as an Otsutsuki vessel and he worshipped Ishiki as a god. This could also be used to set up the 2 missing Otsutsuki. The same thing with Ishiki. You show us more of Ishiki's status in the Otsutsuki clan, the relationship with Kaguya, the battle with Ishiki and Kaguya, and you can also use that to tie into the two missing Otsutsuki. Now, finally, we have number 5, which is the pure eye, something that a lot of you guys probably clicked on a video for. So now here's the thing on that. Okay, so we were told years ago by both one of the lead animators for Boruto's anime, who's also worked on Naruto's anime, and Ikemoto himself, that the Jogun, quite frankly, had not been thought out. Boruto's animator said on his blog that he knew some of the powers of the eye, sensory abilities that were above Naruto's KCM, dimensional travel into Otsutsuki dimensions, being able to see the portals that exist between those dimensions, and a few of the details I addressed in my Jogun Explained video. But he specifically said that the writer at the time, Ukyo Kodachi, had not thought everything through. Ikemoto, on the other hand, when specifically asked why Boruto looked so different in Boruto Chapter 1 than he looked in Boruto the movie, when at that point in time, that was the last time we saw Boruto, he specifically said that they chose to show adult 16-year-old Boruto and unfolding the story as a flashback because it was Masashi Kishimoto's idea, which is why you guys have heard me say numerous times this was an attempt at in medias res, where you show a tease of the future and use the story to build up to that reveal by making the reader wonder, how do we get to that point, and how does what's going on right now fit into that point, which is not something you see often in shonen, because shonen tend to tell the story from the very beginning to the very end, point A all the way to point Z. Series like My Hero Academia, where we get told up front that Deku becomes the #1 hero in hero society, and series like Boruto that give away part of the future, they're not as common in shonen. And to be quite frank with you, it's because a lot of shonen mangaka use very cookie cutter conventional storytelling methods. In terms of the design and the Jogun in particular, Kishimoto just wanted a drastic change from what we last saw with Boruto as a character with Boruto the movie in 2015. Karma, the Jogun, that stuff in 2016 hadn't been thought out all the way, because the adult Boruto design, i.e. 16-year-old Boruto, was done for shock value to please Masashi Kishimoto. By the time the anime started a year later, in the manga, we had already seen how Boruto got its karma seal, and the anime made changes to the opening for chapter 1, like it did the exact same scene panel by panel, but when they animated, the sclera on Boruto's eye was black, whereas in the manga it was white, and in the anime we've seen the color of karma is changed from blue to black whenever it's been activated, depending on the circumstances, which brings us to Ikemoto's last words. When this scene appears, maybe the design will have changed slightly, because they're basically pulling in Akira Toriyama here, which is that they're winging the design until something sticks, which is so fitting given that Ikemoto and Kishimoto are both heavily influenced by Akira Toriyama. Ikemoto more so than Kishimoto. If you watch my Boruto chapter reviews, you know what I'm talking about, but that's so fitting just given the fact that, like, Toriyama, things like Future Trunks design came from watching Terminator movies, and Goku having blonde hair for Super Saiyan, that came from the fact that he ran out of ink when coloring the manga, and he just said, hey, make the hair gold when they asked him. Everything was done on a whim. There's nothing wrong with winging it, but we need a reason to be invested in the pure eye, especially since, as I discussed in my video on why Naruto almost had a third child, which I recommend checking out. That's an interesting story right there. Kishimoto directly stepped in to rewrite the episodes where Boruto was visited by Tsuneri and Boruto thought he had a Byakugan. We know Masashi Kishimoto knows about the eye, but we need a valid reason to be invested in it, besides that this is just an eye that the Otsutsuki clan are scared of. That being said, those are my 5 things that I think we need for the time skip. What are your 5 things that you think we need for the time skip? While you think that over, consider watching these other videos you see on the screen right now.